Welcome to the CFL Outsider, a short series of totally impartial hot takes, odd takes, and generally unconventional opinions on the CFL and Canadian football, with your host and presenter, Old Man Shouting at Clouds.
Hey kids, welcome back to the CFL Outsider for week 19. The standard is the standard. I remain, as always, your 100% impartial, completely unbiased, and slightly discombobulated host and presenter, Old Man Shouting at Clouds. Sorry for the late drop this week on all the shows. This one, Old Man Plays CFL Pick'em in under a minute, and Old Man Plays CFL Fantasy and Pick'em. It's been a hectic week here. Things are definitely off normal. Part of it, as anyone who's been around the last few shows knows, it's been almost 2 weeks since the Goddess headed south to take part in this year's Rebelle Rally. Her and her teammate have a goal of finishing first in the International Cup this year and are looking to get somewhere in about the middle third of the competition. There's 59 teams out of it, so they were looking for that, and I'm happy to report that they're about halfway through. It ends on Friday, I believe, and they've got they're still leading in the International Cup, and they're exactly halfway in the standings, 29 out of the 59. So I would say that they're right about where they wanted to be. And frankly, that explains my discombobulated and flustered week, and that turns out that the Goddess knows where a whole hell of a lot of things are around here that I don't. And she knows a whole hell of a lot more about what needs to be done around here than I do. So it's been an adventure for the puppies and for me and everything. And it's making me realize I fear I've maybe been taking her slightly for granted. So I'm going to have to do better. Old man needs to improve. Don't want to lose that woman. She is fantastic. And the football didn't do a lot to distract me or help me anyway. We reached that part of the season where there should be some real humdinger games as the teams start jockeying for playoff positions, and then there should be some duds as the teams that are either already locked in or out are playing preseason games looking for next year. So this week we had a game that started with a game between two good defenses, and that can always make for a good game. Unfortunately, neither offense was playing well, and a potentially great game was notable, well, mostly for the mistakes that were made. In the second game, we had two teams that were playing out the strings, and, well, it turned entertaining for a little while in the second half, but not that much. Third game should have been a real slobber knocker with second place in the West on the line, and you'd expect both the Riders and the Lions would be fully prepped for that, but turned into a rout that, Riders fans probably really enjoyed, but I don't think anybody else did that much. And finally, we ended the weekend in a cold, sodden game where the play kind of matched the weather. In Pick'em, I went 3 for 1. The Bombers screwed me. I expected they'd do better against the Argos, but hey, leaves me 46 and 26 and 2 if you're counting the ties in. If you use the scoring off the board there that doesn't count ties, apparently I'm 48 and 26 there. So depending on the scoring, I'm happy with either one of them. On fantasy this week, I had a bit of an oops. I forgot to double check the game depth charts when they came out on Sunday for the Montreal-Ottawa game. I had Justin Hardy in, and he wasn't playing, and I never changed it. But I still ended up with 111.1, so I'll take that. I'm not unhappy with that. Not at all. I think I said last week, anything over 100 I take as a win, and yeah, I screwed up, but it happens. But enough bitching about that. Let's get on to the games, shall we? Let's talk about Game 1. Toronto 14 at Winnipeg 11. Statement game. Yeah, maybe it was. Argos wanted to make a statement, Going into the game, most people expected that they'd put up a good show, but I don't think there was many people that doubted that the Bombers would clinch first in the West and go on from there. Argos came in with a different story in mind. And they pretty much stifled the Winnipeg offense the entire game. They only allowed them one touchdown, and that was with like 4 minutes and 20 seconds left in the game. And now, mind you, the Argos, their offense started off looking pretty good early. Their first drive, they went down and got a touchdown. But from there, it was kind of passable at best. They added a couple of field goals in the second quarter and then 2 field goals in a rouge in the fourth, and that was pretty much all the scoring in the game. Now, we did have Sergio for Winnipeg missing 2 field goals, which is unusual. But Toronto held Winnipeg to only 3 field goal tries altogether, and, well, frankly, they got one of each. They got one good, they got one wide, and they got one doink right off the post. The game wasn't all that bad. There were some exceptional plays in the game. Brian Cole with the Bombers, he was all over the field. Not that you could miss it if you were watching. Suits from TSN was raving about him, but he was, including something where he got the fumble where Janarian Grant was on the punt return. Grant was going down to the ground. He was barely a foot and a half off the ground when Cole came in, reached underneath him to punch the ball out, and then somehow still landed on it and recovered his own fumble, which left the Bombers with a great opportunity, and they proceeded to squander it by turning it over on downs at the goal line, rather than maybe kicking a field goal that might have helped. But O'Shea, he took a page out of Coach Dinwiddie's book, because Dinwiddie's been doing this all season. If they get down close, if they're within the 5, he goes for it on all 3 tries. Counts on the fact that his defense, if they don't make it, his defense will hold the other team there. They'll get a punt and have another short field, and eventually they'll come down and get the touchdown out of it. Winnipeg seemed to take that same attitude this game, and it didn't work well for either of them. In both cases, once the other team had stuffed them at the goal line, they managed to march it out of danger, at least. For Toronto, in this case, they got it out, I think it was about the 30 before they had to punt. Winnipeg, when it happened with them, they got it all the way down for a field goal try that doinked off the upright. And I think overall the Bombers had overcoached their game plan. They knew that the Argos were going to be all geared up, fill in the box, ready to stop Brady, and they seemed to go away from him. Not just in the running game, but even in the passing game, which they're usually fairly good at. Buck Pierce decided he'd go with a short passing game instead, and that might have worked if the O-line could protect Zach, but they couldn't. The Argos weren't even blitzing that much. When they did blitz, it was ugly as hell. But even with 4, they were getting home consistently and putting sacks in anytime the Bombers had a chance to get going. You know, and it looked like there could have been some more points, because in the second half there were long drives. Both offenses managed to rack up a bunch of yards, but no scoring. They started out with the Bombers, took the opening kickoff, marched 66 yards up the field until suddenly Mark Milton came in got a strip sack on Zach, and who was it? I think it was McManus who recovered the fumble. Toronto got the ball from there. They marched 83 yards all the way down to the 1-yard line for Winnipeg, and the Chad got stuffed trying to get in there on 3rd and 1. Most of the third quarter has been eaten up on those 2 drives. Winnipeg gets the ball back, and they use up the last 5 minutes, plus another 5 minutes in the fourth quarter, taking it down 59 yards, and this was one where they came right off their own goal line, got all the way down, but then tried the field goal that went for a doink. So it didn't help. No points for them at all. The Argos went 2 and out then, and the Bombers finally managed to put a touchdown in. They had a 10-play, 84-yard drive that got them to score, but it was frankly too little too late. They did get one more chance to get in and either win or tie the game, but sacks hurt them. They ended up, because of a sack on 3rd and 17, and anyone that saw this game knows the story. Zach scrambled, dove along the sidelines, may or may not have gotten the ball across the first down marker. The refs said no. It was reviewed automatically as a potential turnover, and the command center said no. So it was Toronto ball then. There was, I believe, about 1:30 or so left on the clock, something like that at that point. And O'Shea decided he was going to push the point. He threw his challenge flag and wanted them to look again at that spot. You got to find something. That's our ball, he said. He said. And the command center said, no, it's not. Now, I don't generally criticize Coach O'Shea. I don't criticize most coaches because they're much better than me. They're coaching in the CFL. And Coach O'Shea has a huge winning record. But I think he was emotional on that one. I think he made a mistake because in the end, when they challenged that, knowing that they'd already looked at it and they weren't going to change their mind, he lost his last time out. They got the ball back because Toronto had 2 rush plays that they stopped for no first down. They punted and Winnipeg got the ball, and I think about their own 36 with 10 seconds left. All they could do was try a Hail Mary and it got intercepted. Now, if they hadn't challenged that last play, if they hadn't challenged that spot, they would have had a timeout. And of course, we never know how the game would have went. If they'd taken the timeout, maybe Toronto tries a pass play to get another first down. Who knows? But in theory, they had a timeout. They could have had 30 seconds left on the clock when they got the ball and 25 yards to move into field goal range for what would have been a tie at that point because Toronto had kicked a rouge with the ball and gone to a 3-point lead. Never happened because, again, just too much of an emotional call from Coach O'Shea. And I'm seeing more of that. He made the call on challenging earlier in the season where they won the challenge and lost 2 yards on the one Nick Dembski reception. And it seems like in some ways Coach O'Shea is just getting to the point of it's more important for him to be right than to actually win. And maybe he's getting too old and grumpy like us old men, and maybe it's time for him to move on and them to let somebody else come on in. Anyway, just some quick closing thoughts on this game before we move on. There was a point where Winnipeg was marching in the third quarter, doing fairly well, and Brady Oliveira had ripped off a nice 35-yard run. Matty Dunnigan pointed out that the Argos corner, Benji Franklin, made himself a business decision because by the time Brady got close to him, he was 35 yards downfield. Benji could have put his nose in and tried to take him down hard, but he kind of saw, there's 3 or 4 others there getting after him. I'll maybe just watch from here. Yeah. Business decision, they called them. Let's make sure I'm playing next week. I also got to notice that at one point there was a potential scoring play, and the command center reviewed it. Ben Major, as the head official, took great pains to explain fully that this was a potential scoring play and that therefore it was being reviewed. I call that the MBT effect after his rants last week. Now, I'll also say I've been watching the CFL for over 5 decades now. And I watch as many of the games as I can, mostly every game, every weekend, especially since it's become available in the last 30 years and that. And twice in that time, I can remember seeing a play where a play gets whistled dead before the ball is snapped, and the O lineman stop, and a D lineman doesn't stop and comes running in and hits the quarterback. Now, it happened this weekend. That was one of the 2 times I've seen it. Jake Thomas did that, and he came in, gave the Chad a bit of a bump and got a penalty for it. And he said, well, afterwards, I guess, yeah, that's what they're calling a penalty on now. But I wonder a bit, because the only other time I've ever seen it was 20 years ago. And again, it was in Winnipeg with the Riders playing in the Banjo Bowl. There was somebody went offside and it was loud again, and one of the Winnipeg DNs, I think, came flying around, and even though everybody was standing still, smacked Darian Durant, messed up his elbow, took him out for the season, probably cost the Riders a Grey Cup that year because they had no backup. Now, I'm twice with Winnipeg over 10 years. I don't know. I'm not saying, and don't know what I'm saying. It's a coincidence, I guess is all that I'm saying. But it is nice to see the league's evolved a bit, because that one 10 years ago, there wasn't even a flag on it. This time, at least, there was a flag. And I also got to say, I don't know who it was. I didn't see it, but from what they were saying on the game, apparently after Winnipeg lost the challenge for the placement on the ball, somebody sprayed one of the officials with a water bottle, which may sound like, it's a juvenile thing, why do it? It's not just juvenile. Whoever did that should be suspended. The refs have a really tough job to do out there. They depend on the fact that they get respect to keep them safe and to keep them in control of the game. So if a player is not going to acknowledge that and think that he can disrespect the official just because a call doesn't go their way, that should be gone for a game. That's my opinion. For whatever it's worth, I think it's important that we keep the refs being the refs and able to do their job. Okay, so what else do we have? Oh, game 2, Edmonton 23 at Calgary 18. The Elks start Trey. The Elk win. Who'd have thunk it? I figured it was not a good omen for the quality of the game when it opened up in TSN/CTV, because they had the Saturday game, had their graphic, and it looked like some kind of meme I'd put together on MS Paint. And I was right. It wasn't a good game. There was about 55 minutes of pinching and slapping myself trying to stay awake, and then amazingly about 5 minutes of heart-pounding action at the end. But it wasn't necessarily worth sitting through to get that last little bit. Now, it's obvious Calgary's problems run deeper than at quarterback, and because it felt like this game should have been more entertaining than it was. Trey was out there. He was running around doing Trey stuff. He was scrambling when he had to, innovating when he had to. He went, I think, 16 passes before he threw an incompletion in the third quarter. But at that point, even without all that, he still only had 16 points, And Schultz, he was out there running around, and he's shown off he's got some pretty good wheels, but the accuracy just isn't there in his game. There were 2 D linemen that got interceptions, 1 for each team. Oakman, and I think for Edmonton, I think it was Hicks for Calgary. You don't see that every game. Moncrief timed up a couple of nice sacks, and Purefoy showed that he's still got some good range with a real nice knockdown right at the start of the second quarter there. And the 2 of them have shown that bringing them in as veterans were good for that team. So there was good things happening, and it should have been more entertaining, but it wasn't. There was just no spark. It felt kind of like watching paint dry. Rankin running, especially in the fourth, that got exciting. Helped my fantasy team out because I had him on there. And Trey gave a good halftime interview. He actually talked about the game and about what was working and wasn't working. He didn't give a bunch of cliches, But in general, it's just, this was about 3 hours of my life I won't get back. Now, game 3, BC 8 at Saskatchewan 39. That's not a statement game. This is a statement game. I'd say it in an Aussie accent if I could, because, Crocodile Dundee and all that. But the last thing anybody wants to hear is me doing an accent. I think we can agree, though, something is very wrong with the Lions, and we'll talk about that later. But first, it was obvious that the football gods were smiling on the Riders for this game. Rourke's first pass attempt took 2 lucky, depending on who you cheer for, call them lucky, maybe bounces, and then at least 3 somewhat more intentional redirections and ended up with a Rider touchdown. Rourke threw a little flare out in the flat to stand back. It went off his shoulder, came down, bounced off of his back of his heel, bounced back up in the air where Agent Zero, Roland Milligan, was coming in, and he made a bit of a dive trying to get, well, not really a dive, but a reach, tried to get at it, realized he wasn't controlling it, so he just, volleyball style basically, set it back up towards the inside where Dante Williams was. And he kind of bobbled it once or twice, realized it was getting away from him, and flipped it straight to A.J. Allen, who ended up with his hands, ran 48 yards, touchdown, 2 plays into the game, Riders 7-0. Yeah, looking pretty good. And then 2 plays later, Rourke turns around and throws another one to a green jersey and gets lucky that the command center takes a quick look at it and says, no, it was actually a trap ball. And it probably was, but it was very close. So, without that, the game would have been off to an even better start. Because that wasn't an interception, they did manage to keep going and got a rouge, while the Riders kicked a couple more field goals. And that got us out of the first quarter, basically. And then the Lions did put together a good drive. And again, makes me want the all 24, but I'll come back to that later too. Put together a good second quarter drive, ended up with Mackey playing the short yardage quarterback role and 2-yard sneak, took it in. That kind of closed the lead down to 5 points, even after the Riders got that pick six to start the game. And you could see the longtime Rider fans, the twitches and the ticks of PTSD started slipping back in. Oh no, but they needn't have worried. The Lions just didn't have it done this day. They didn't score again. They had their 8 points and that was it. The Riders dominated them. Coach Campbell with the Lions was obviously frustrated and he made bad decisions. With the score 17-7 late in the first half, less than 3 minutes to go, he had the ball 3rd and 2 on, I think, the Riders about 22. Chance to kick a field goal, and I can't remember, but would have brought the game somewhat closer at that point. Instead, he goes for it, tries to run it even as a 2-yard quarterback sneak, which the Riders stuff. So now there's like 2:30 left in that. Maybe they'll come down and score, but they don't. They have to punt. So BC gets one more chance. And now we got like 1:32 left, and so this is their chance to get back into it. Rourke throws a fairly nice pass across the middle to McGinnis, but down comes Nelson Lacombo from his safety position. And now Nelson's been taking some heat from some Rider fans this year that he's not playing the safety position tough. He's not that hard hitter over the middle. But he sure lit into McGinnis on this one and popped the ball out. CJ Rivas jumped on it. And the Riders took a few plays, marched down, put a touchdown in off of it. They kicked off, 21 seconds left. By the time BC had returned it, they had 15 seconds left. You'd think that they'd probably just maybe take a knee. They were about at the 30-yard line of their own 30 or so. Take a knee, get out of the half, come back to fight again. But no, they were desperate. They were going to do something, so they sent Rourke back to pass. Baldonado got a fantastic pressure on him. Ball went up where it shouldn't have. CJ Avery comes down with it. The Riders kick another field goal before the half. And the Lions' desperation had just kept going in the second half. They came out, and admittedly, they're down by 16 points at this, 26-10, but it's 2 scores basically and a half of football to play. If you've got any faith in your offense, you think you can do it, but no, they come out and try an onside kick, catch the Riders napping. Well, they don't, but it doesn't matter because the kick doesn't even get into play. It's way too high. It goes out of bounds. Riders get the ball short. We'll take that for a field goal. Thank you very much. Boom. Lions get the ball back. They go 2 and out. And Riders get another touchdown and then close out with a field goal in the fourth quarter. And weirdly enough, everyone's wondering, will it be Rourke? Will it be Adams? Where are they at? And there seems to be less coherency in their managing the quarterbacks than there is in Edmonton even. And so with Rourke, but then going into the fourth, they decided he's not doing it. So you'd think it's Adams come in, but no, they go right to their third stinger, to Bryce. Now, I don't know what's going on there. Is it possible that the owner's getting involved and he spent all this money on a nice and shiny new toy in Rourke, and he said basically, you play Rourke, if Rourke's healthy, Adams doesn't get in? Maybe that's what happened. So they put Bryce in because I've been told Adams doesn't play when Rourke's. I don't know. That's just pure speculation on my part, but it makes me wonder. Anyway, what else can I talk about here? Oh, I'm going to have to rejig my top 10 favorite CFL players because I got to find room for having got Baldonado in there. Is he coming on as a D lineman. I'll also point out to anyone who's going to be playing against the Riders, and well, we know that's Calgary to end the season, but then who gets them where in the playoffs, we don't know yet because first in the West is still up for grabs, but just anyone that's there, they're on this 4-game winning streak. They're doing quite well on their turnovers. They're doing quite well with their offense. And the kicking, which seems so suspect. Well, Brett Lowther had that bad game with Montreal 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, I think, where he missed 4. Since then, he's been 26 for 27. 96.3% he's kicking at going into the playoffs, including long ones. Yeah, so they could make some noise in the playoffs. And the last thing that I kind of enjoyed was, they say this late in the season, everyone's playing injured. And that's definitely true. Even if you happen to listen to the CKRM radio broadcast of the Riders game, their voice of the Riders, Dave Thomas, and color guy Luke Mullender, both sounded like they needed about, like a 5-pound lozenge they could just chip chunks off of and keep throwing in their mouth, because tired, gravelly voices at the end of the season, guys. You're pros and you're hanging in there, but we can tell you're playing hurt. Anyway, so that takes us to the last game. Game 4, Ottawa 13 at Montreal 19. A damp, soggy, depressing day. And the weather was bad too. The tone was pretty much set in this one when Montreal blocked a 34-yard field goal attempt by Lewis Ward. It was relatively early in the game, and I don't see it, but teams must be seeing something. His kicking trajectory must be low even on the short field goals, because there was this one in this game, and then there was the 2 that the Riders blocked against him in the game in Ottawa a couple of months back. Something there, not good. Also, I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, there seems like there's a lot of people, I'm guessing mostly Ottawa fans, that are quick to rush to Money Hunter's defense when you say anything about him being a questionable player. So I don't know. I don't know the man. Maybe he's not a dirty player, but I think we can say at this point, the style he is playing or is being asked to play at safety is a dirty style. I'm sure it's for intimidation purposes, but you can do that without being a bad player. Now, he did take out Sean Bain Jr. for the season with a horrendous low hit in Riderville that Bain had no chance of seeing, and he got defended there a whole lot. So I'm wondering now, how do the folks that are stepping up for him, how do you feel about him in this game where he's takes 2 unnecessary roughness calls on one play? He's hitting and pushing players after the plays stopped, and lucky he didn't get more whistles for that. He's tackling people and then standing over them and flexing, which should also have been a penalty. Yeah, if he's going to play that way, the league's going to have to step in and do something. Start fining him and stuff, because it's not good. The Red Blacks, they've been struggling lately. I think this is they've got like a tie in their last 4 or 5 games. The rest are all losses and that. So they're working hard at it, and they've got the injury bug, but then so do other people, so you can't really say that. And more, they just seem to be unraveling somewhat. And I'll give the coaching staff their credit. They threw everything they had at this game. They were revolving the quarterbacks in and out. They were going with different formations. They were trying different sort of trick plays and that, and anything that might give the offense a spark, and it just didn't happen. And then any time that they did maybe get a little bit of a ember going, maybe a chance of a flame, there'd be another deluge of flags that would just drown it out. Because that was the other thing. They could not play a clean game. I don't know how many penalties. I didn't check for what the final was, but it seemed like there was a flag on every play. And really, like I said, it was a damp, soggy day, and the game was kind of like that. They managed to kick 4 field goals apiece. Ottawa had 1 blocked. Montreal got all 4 of theirs. Montreal got a touchdown, and that was the difference maker. But it wasn't like a spectacular win. But the only other thing that's worth noting from that game is that Davis Alexander's a young quarterback learning the game a lot. He got himself a darn good hit, which apparently he's now learned to slide. That about pretty much takes us to all we've got from the game. So just some extra points, some extra thoughts. I'm going to go back to a rant on wanting TSN to make the all 24 camera available somewhere, on TSN Plus something. During that BC Saskatchewan game, the Riders' defense shut down BC all game except for one drive. BC moved the ball well during that drive. It looked like it was the only time during the game, other than one or two flashes, where Rourke was reading what he was seeing on the defense and was throwing the ball confidently. And then when it was over, it was right back to he couldn't do anything. So I'd like to know what the defenses are doing during that time. I'd like to be able, as a fan, I want to be able to see that and see where it's changed. What did they do? Where did they flip it around? You can't do that the way the game is shown on TV regularly because the camera follows the ball. But if you put that all 24 up there as something even that we can have as just something to look at when we want to, it'd be great. Plus, I don't know if anybody considers this, but I know football coaches that coach at the minor level that have teams over for a watch party to try and help them equate how the pros play a game compared to what they want them to be doing. And it can work out not bad. But there's not as many teaching moments as you'd like because, again, you see a play that goes the way that you want, but are you actually getting the look that tells the players, okay, look at how a pro does this. If they would make that all 24 available, even on TSN Plus, you could, at that point, you see a play, you want to make a highlight to your players, you flip over to the all 24, you show them how it's playing out, where the movement is, they learn. They get more interested in football, they get more interested in CFL football, they become lifelong fans. Everybody wins. Win-win. Start making that all 24 available somewhere. Somewhere. Real football fans want it. We need it. Another thought, Hamilton's late winning streak might be the worst thing that could have happened to that team. I mean, they started real slow, then they sputtered a bit, and then all of a sudden they won, what was it, 3, 4, 5 in a row? Now, if they hadn't done that, if they'd gone 16 or 2-16 maybe, something like that, 3-15, then probably it would have led to a really badly needed house cleaning there. They could have taken the whole administration from Orlando on down and turfed them on out and got in an effective coaching and administrative staff. Now, the fact that they had a weird outside possible chance of making the playoffs because they started playing better later in the year, that will probably be enough to convince Bob Young and the rest of the decision makers in Hamilton that they're going to just keep the assembled group of ineffective dinosaurs that they have and double down on them. You know, really, I mean, Milanovic, he's won Grey Cups, but he doesn't have a winning record overall. Jones, yeah, he's shown this year that he can still put out a pretty darn good defense, but we all know he's not great for player morale, and that doesn't help. And there's been just an icky feeling ever since June Jones left and Steinhauer somehow was given the keys to the whole operation. So we'll see. I would have hoped they'd get somebody out of there and get someone new in, but we don't know. And then likewise, something is really rotten in the BC locker room right now. And everyone's saying, oh, it's the mistake was that they brought Rourke back in and they brought Betts back in and threw them a lot of money, and other players got annoyed by that, and there were Adams guys and they didn't like that Rourke was starting. Everybody's speculating, and it could be that. I mean, that could divide up a room. They certainly, you look at it like how the Alouettes last year brought in Sankey and Lemon and how they integrated them into that team and it just made them better. The Lions did do the opposite of that. But I don't know that that's really the problem, because they were starting, that's whole slide, that not being able to do anything, and the team looking dead and lifeless, like nobody gives a damn. That started before Rourke came in. That started before Adams got injured. And yes, they were playing good teams in Montreal, but they lost to Calgary even, who nobody loses to. So is it something else? Is it as simple as, and this is wholly unfounded, no evidence for it whatsoever, speculation, But in my experience, the only time I've seen locker rooms go that way was where you get a situation where somebody, usually a good key player, ends up stepping out with the special someone of another good key player and just tears the room apart. Like I said, idle speculation. I don't know, but they better figure out something for next year. I cannot believe that they're going to go past the semifinal in this year's playoffs. I don't know if they're going to be in Saskatchewan or Winnipeg, and everyone's talking to be cold weather and yada yada yada, but they have done nothing to show me that they can go anywhere this year. So hopefully they'll take us a serious look at everything over the off season, rethink how they're approaching their entire game of football, and make it happen. Give the BC fans what they do deserve. So that's about all that I've got there, other than the gambling advice segment. There's less chances this weekend because there's only 3 games, so it should be much easier to avoid throwing your money away. The gambling advice this week, as always, don't. Anyway, thanks for tuning in again. Remember to share and subscribe here. There's a nice little subscribe button right down there. Share this with anybody sort of in your ecosystem, anybody that might be willing to, or not be willing, anybody who might enjoy this. Get it out there. Let them decide for themselves. Now, if you listen on the podcatcher, maybe give us a nice 5-star rating. Or a 1-star if you really hate us. But never bother with a rating between 1 and 5, because I know from my time in various industries, those get ignored. The only ones that really count are 1s or 5s. So if you hate what I'm doing, give me a 1 and they'll stop sending me out to other people. If you like this, give me a 5 and maybe they'll sort of recommend it to a few other folks and we'll keep growing this sucker together. Anyway, so that's about that. You know, I'm always open to the comments. Leave one on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcatcher or you don't feel like putting a public comment in YouTube, you can always email me. I'll put the email right down here. Oldman, all one word, .shoutingatclouds, all one word, @shaw, SHAW.ca. Let me know what you're thinking. Let's get a dialogue started here anyway. Oh, and keep mashing that like button. I like the likes. I want to end up like Sally Field someday, to be able to come up and go, "You like me. You really like me." That's about all I got. Good luck with your fantasy and pick 'em this week. Hopefully the games, even though there's not much on the line, will be good and we'll all have a fun weekend. And until next week, get the hell off my lawn.